Over the last few weeks, Ukraine has been booking remarkable success in its drone campaign against Russia, creating scenes like these, turning the sky above places such as Moscow, Sochi, and St. Petersburg black. And while many analysts like to point towards the growing fuel crisis that the Russian Federation is experiencing as a particularly painful point of pressure, one aspect of these strikes is being severely overlooked: its impact on the agricultural sector. Before we dive into this video, let's say you're a farmer in rural Russia and you want to work the fields. What do you have to do? First, you walk to your tractor, you get in and start the engine. It won't start. So you grab your phone and look for spare parts, only to realize that sanctions have either made them too expensive or they simply don't exist, or the warehouse that had them just blew up. Happens. So you make your own. Of course you're no expert, but you do whatever you can, kind of. Alright, now you get the engine running, but you notice the fuel is low. The queues at the gas station still persist, and you can't really afford it, so the only fuel you get is subpar. But whatever, you gotta do what you gotta do. So you get gas, fill up the tractor, and get it running, only for it to break down within 5 minutes. If this already seems bad, it gets worse. The Russo-Ukrainian war has entered a new stage, one that years ago Western analysts believed to be unthinkable. Ukraine has regained the initiative against the Russian Federation, making technological leaps at paces unheard of in modern times. And as this happens, Russia is getting a taste of its own medicine, with strikes targeting Russia yielding significant strategic success, as is being demonstrated with the Ukrainian drone forces targeting Crimea, making it an almost unbearable burden for Russia. The success of Ukraine's development of long-range drones also means that it can respond to Russian terror tactics, targeting refineries that fuel the Russian war machine and its coffers, but also the Russian people due to its dual-use nature. We will come back to this later, so for now remember that these targets are dual use. Ukraine has also utilized its ability to target oil refineries deep within Russia to shift the location of air defense systems, allowing for more effective use of mid-range drones along the front line, notably resulting in what seems to be the complete annihilation of Russia's shadow fleet, and essentially full control over Crimea's airspace. And this will have consequences. Russian logistics are under heavy strain on the southern front, prompting some small-scale withdrawals from the Kinburn Spit, possibly being a sign of further collapse in the future. But regarding impact, direct impact is not the only result Ukrainian drone strikes achieve, because they also linger deeper in the minds. Since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion, drones and missiles have been tormenting the Ukrainian people all across the country. Day and night, summer and winter. Russian forces have targeted dual-purpose power plants and heating stations with the intent of breaking the resistance of the Ukrainian people. This has not worked as a terror tactic or as a genuine strategy to somehow pressure the Ukrainian armed forces at the front. What it has done is pissed off the Ukrainians and made them more vigorous in seeking retaliation. Since 2023, Ukraine's drone program has been rapidly evolving and is now at the point where it can strike cities such as Moscow and St. Petersburg regularly with numbers to match. For Russians who lived under the impression of stability despite the war, these strikes came as a warm introduction, like blowing the tops off of a pressure cooker. Russia has an unwritten social contract with Putin's regime. In exchange for the Russian people's support, his regime promises safety and non-involvement in everyday people's life. But with the war having lasted much longer than the initially planned 3 days, Russian casualties have already started to affect people's life through an economy of death, or more adversely, by losing family members and friends. With literal missiles and drones falling onto Moscow, blocking out the sun on a summer day, it becomes very hard not to notice the destruction of this social contract. And it becomes even more evident that Ukraine will respond in kind to Russian attacks. Fears of the Russian power grid and thermal plants being targeted are not too hard to imagine. Add to this the fuel shortage that is occurring due to Ukraine's strikes on practically every oil refinery in Russia, resulting in massive price hikes and fuel shortages throughout all of Russia, and the optics are bleak. TikTok trends talking about the chance to experience the 90s again are increasing and discontent is growing. But on the topic of fuel, these fuel shortages obviously affect the Russian population and even the military on certain parts of the front line, but also strategic regions like Crimea and Kursk. This is very telling. If Russia, a country that has dedicated its entire economy to the war, can't even ensure fuel for its army and its people, what will happen to logistics? The chances are that as the crisis extends, logistics will be heavily impacted if they're not already. And this is a critical point, because every day that a shortage persists without replenishing its reserves freezes society more and more exponentially. Days matter, not months, especially in a country as large as Russia. But why does this matter? Remember the farmer from the beginning of this video? He's still sitting around doing nothing since his tractor got screwed. And he needs fuel too, if he wants to see it work again. But what is this? There's nothing left for him. This worries the farmer a lot, as harvest season starts in late July through to August. And he can't harvest the crop on his endless fields without a tractor. His harvest might rot and go to waste, throwing him into financial ruin. Desperately, in a fit of inspiration, he harvests the plot with some horses, if the army hasn't already taken them. Now, he has a harvest, but wait, the transport isn't coming, and it won't be for a while. Wasted efforts. With the fuel crisis seemingly having no end, it looks like Russia will have an incoming issue with its summer harvest, which helps feed the people during colder months. Reminiscent of the 90s, food shortages have already appeared in Crimea, where logistics have already come to a standstill due to fuel crises. Even if the harvest succeeds, Russia desperately needs funds and would aim to sell off most of its harvests, dedicating whatever fuel to international exports rather than domestic exports. Although, of course, calculations considering the needs of domestic consumption are still considered, misallocation is more than likely to occur. Furthermore, due to the destruction of a large portion of Russia's shadow fleet, the financial incentive that might have been able to brute force logistics into receiving fuel disappears. The whole harvest would cost too much fuel with little direct relief to help alleviate some of Russia's most pressing issues. This scenario ultimately believes that the Russian government will not have the capabilities to support the agricultural sector during the harvest, failing to sell and transport grain, while also insisting that the priority of the Russian government is war rather than its people. As winter approaches, it looks more likely than ever that something might happen. An escalation, a political collapse, a mutiny. What is for sure is that if things do not change, massive sections of the agricultural sector are doomed to recess and potentially cause a domino effect of unforeseen consequences this coming winter. Paired with a high chance of no heating or electricity in Moscow this winter once Russia decides to ignorantly attack Ukrainian heating stations, means that Moscow, for once, indeed never sleeps due to their own ignorance and refusal to acknowledge reality and a need for change.
If you enjoyed this analysis, hit that like on the video and make sure to subscribe to the channel. You can find the sources used for this video in the description below. Don't forget to stay curious.